Tonight, concern about what's happening to some people here after they die.
Right behind this dumpster, there are 3 freezer units, and inside those units are 36 bodies that have not been claimed by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who can't afford the cremation and funeral costs. That story coming up.
First, it was a suspicious death. Now, police believe the deceased woman found in this vacant home here in Outer Cove was a victim of homicide.
This was a targeted attack, and there is no threat to public safety in connection with this event.
I'm Terry Roberts. I'll have that story coming up.
Based on kind of some educated guesstimates of the wood, I would not be surprised if the ship originated in Europe.
Uncovering the mystery of the Cape Ray shipwreck, the wood is now being analyzed in a lab at MUN. What they have and haven't learned so far, coming up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Our top story tonight, there are now 4 freezer trucks outside the Health Sciences Centre in St. John's filled with corpses. More and more people are not claiming their loved ones when they die because they can't afford cremation or basic funeral services. And a warning, this story could be upsetting for some viewers. Here and Now's Anthony Germain reports.
CBC News has learned that right behind the garbage dumpster that you just saw, there are these 3 freezer units, and inside those freezer units are 28 bodies. And what's happening in Newfoundland and Labrador is that more and more people are not claiming the bodies of their loved ones when they pass away because they just can't afford the costs of cremation and funerals. Now, there is a government program that does allow people who are receiving income assistance to offset those costs, but the rates the government pays, the cash you can get, those rates haven't changed in almost 20 years. So that's causing a problem. Inside the morgue, there are times where 2 to 3 bodies are piled up on stretchers, and the overflow is brought here during the night. Now, we've asked the government to actually comment on what it plans to do to address this situation, and we've learned there is a meeting of all the stakeholders next month that's planned to happen to see what they can do about this situation here behind the Janeway. Anthony Germain, CBC News, St. John's.
Now, CBC first reported that story this morning, and what followed was strong reaction at the House of Assembly. The government is promising to improve how bodies are stored, but critics say that doesn't address the real problem. Mark Quinn reports.
Health Minister Tom Osborne says he learned about this on the news today. As many as 28 bodies frozen here indefinitely.
It's disturbing, there's no question, and it's certainly not the way we'd like to see the bodies of individuals stored or preserved until claimed by a loved one.
He says the health authority is working on a solution, not to prevent the bodies from ending up here, but to store more of them better.
I was advised by the health authority that they're looking at a permanent storage facility, which would obviously have much more dignity than an outside facility. Under the situation that they're facing, they have to have somewhere. So they made arrangements for the storage where it is currently, but they have plans in place and are looking at putting in a permanent storage facility for individuals' remains.
But the NDP's leader says that's unacceptable. Jim Dinn says this isn't a storage problem.
It's a funding issue. This is so self-evident and has been brought to the attention of government before, and they've dragged their feet on it. And here we have the solution is let's put freezer units there and simply add more freezer units, and now let's build up a more permanent storage structure. You tell me if that's respect for the remains of a loved one and families. It's not. Simple as that. It's appalling.
Most of the bodies that are here because their loved ones can't afford to claim them and pay for funeral services. The Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development provides money for people who can't afford those. But what it pays hasn't increased in about 20 years.
This has only become an issue as of late, and now that we know it is an issue, we already had decided that we need to work on that. And but now that it's now that it's here and we're dealing with it, we're hoping to move it along as fast as we can. And certainly, as in our meeting with the funeral directors that we had, we certainly said to them, we will look at the costing involved here and see what we can do.
Osborne said he just learned about this problem today. But Dinh said funeral directors contacted the provincial government about this in 2021. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, as you heard Anthony mention off the top there, inflation plays a role in all of this. So what help is there for those who can't afford cremation and funeral costs? And what role do funeral homes play? The conversation continues with Anthony Germain. That's in less than 30 minutes on Here and Now. Well, in other news, we have more details tonight on the discovery of a dead woman in Outer Cove. Police are treating the death as a homicide, and investigators are now pleading to the public for help. Here and Now's Terry Roberts has the latest.
Police believe it all started here in the Virginia Park area of St. John's. The female victim was last seen on Middleton Street between 8 and 8:30 Tuesday morning. There's also big interest in this car, a blue Hyundai Elantra. Police say it drove Tuesday morning from Middleton Street, 5 kilometers away, to Liam Drive, a quiet gravel road located just off Outer Cove Road, directly behind St. Francis of Assisi School. Police were alerted around 10 a.m. and found the woman's body here, inside this abandoned and crumbling house. The Elantra was parked across the road. Within a few hours, the RNC determined the woman's death was suspicious. This afternoon, confirmation that the woman was a victim of homicide, and the chief medical examiner is working to confirm the cause of death.
This was a targeted attack, and there is no threat to public safety in connection with this event.
Investigators have a suspect in their sights and will only say the suspect and the victim were known to each other. Cadigan gave this answer when asked if there's been an arrest.
We do have a suspect identified, and as we progress this investigation, we will provide updates as to what action is to follow.
Officers canvass the neighborhood. A patrol car remains parked outside this home. Rattled neighbors say the woman lived here with her children. Police want the community to help with the investigation, especially if there's video of that Elantra from Tuesday morning.
It's very important that if there's any information out there, any details that can assist us, that they come forward.
Plenty of new information today, but still so many unanswered questions. Why was the deceased woman found in this vacant house? How was she murdered? And what was her actual relationship to the suspect? Police are being tight-lipped about those and other questions tonight. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Outer Cove.
Newfoundland and Labrador's police watchdog agency has charged an RCMP officer with careless use of a firearm. The charge stems from an incident on May 15, 2022 in Corner Brook. According to the Serious Incident Response Team, the officer was off duty at the time and nobody was hurt. The RCMP says the person in question remains an active member of the force and his duty status is currently under review. Now, this charge comes following a tumultuous year for the province's Mounties. Constable Michael Wheeler will be sentenced next month for pointing his firearm at a woman while drinking at a friend's house in 2018. CERT also charged Constable Jeffrey Cormier with assault this fall after a video surfaced showing officers pushing a man onto the side of a police cruiser after escorting him off a plane at the Stephenville airport. And last February, CERT also charged Constable Michael Han with possession of cocaine for the purpose of trafficking, unauthorized use of a computer, and breach of trust.
Well, temperatures this morning were pretty nice for the most part, but above zero for Deer Lake, Corner Brook, Labrador sitting generally into the minus single digits with the exception of northern and western portions of Labrador. But this cold air has been sinking south through a good chunk of the day today. But we do have that mild air still in play across the island that is leading to some shower activity, and that's going to end as we head through tonight. If we take a look at this colder air to the north, that is going to play a role in what happens over the next couple of days as far as our next weather maker is concerned. And we do have that weather maker getting itself together right now just off the coast there of the U.S. And it is going to interact with that cold air and it is going to lead to some winter storm conditions. Environment Canada has winter storm warnings in place for the Avalon as well as the Burin Peninsula. And then we've got snowfall warnings all the way from the Bonavista Peninsula, all the way to the southwest. We'll talk all about it when I come back.
I'll start out and give you the updates. Right now, Team Saga, Team 99 was in the lead. Looks like there's...
Well, it's off to the final checkpoint for the 2024 Canes Quest snowmobile race around most of Labrador. Team 99, father-son duo Randy and Sebastian Malik, are running in first place. After traveling from Nain earlier today, the teams will stop in Churchill Falls for an 8-hour mandatory layover. Then they head up to the Quebec-Labrador border to Schefferville before hitting the home stretch back to Labrador City. Teams are expected to cross the finish line around noon tomorrow. Meanwhile, as racers head toward that finish line, Canes Quest fans are watching closely. They're passionate, they're pumped, and they've been following along since the very beginning.
From Labrador West, Nick Hewlett and Ryan Watkins.
As I said, I think it's a little bit of craziness, and at the same time, I think it's an ambition to really complete the race, really. I think a lot of the racers right now, all they want to do is, there's probably half the racer maybe. They're here for the excitement and the speed and everything else, and I think majority of them are probably just want to finish the race, because it is pretty challenging.
And Chris Hilton from North Bay, Ontario.
Have you ever seen a Canes Quest race before?
No, this is going to be my first year doing it.
And what do you think so far about it?
I think it's cool and seeing all the sleds lined up and everything, and it's going to be good.
What's the coolest thing you've seen here so far?
The skidders.
It's pretty cool. Just seeing everyone together and go for the same thing.
I think it's trying to see a bunch of racers from a bunch of different places coming all together in one spot.
Just saw you sitting on a snow machine. What are you doing here at fan night?
My dad's Team 11.
And how do you feel knowing that your dad's taking part in this really crazy race?
Nice.
Smile.
He's pretty nervous. I'm pretty nervous. I think a lot of the nervousness, has to do because of first-time racing. If your machine's going to make it, if the weather's going to cooperate with you. It's all these little things that add up, and I think in some ways, right now, a lot of the racers are probably more wondering about the weather conditions than anything else.
So when you're a little bit older, would you like to participate in this race?
Yes.
Why would you want to do that?
I don't know, just the adrenaline seems so fun.
Well, turning to the Brier now, Andrew Simmons and Team Newfoundland and Labrador are facing off against Manitoba this hour. The score right now is tied 2-2 after 5 ends of play. Team Canada, led by Brad Goujiu, played earlier today, dominating Trevor Smith and Team Prince Edward Island. The 11-3 win brings Team Goujiu to the top of their pool. It was Goujiu's 5th win in Regina. The two-time defending champion has 2 losses at the tournament. An awards ceremony at Government House in St. John's honored companies and individuals who work to support the Provincial Eating Disorder Foundation. Here now's Ife Alaba attended the event.
Well, today we are honoring a number of people in the community, volunteers, business corporations and that, who support us on a regular basis and have been doing so for a number of years. We've been coming to Government House now for 7 years to have this event, and this year we're very pleased to be honoring 3 different, groups of people for the work that they do for us and have continued to do over the years.
The award in specific that you got is called the Renata Elizabeth Willard Community Support Award. Why is that title so important?
Well, it's in honor of our niece who died with eating disorder, and it's just a lovely award, and it's nice. It's in her honor that we do the tournament every year. They've done something very nice, and it's a worldwide cause, and it's lovely. But they've done a lot of nice work in Newfoundland for it.
A few years ago, we decided that just having 3 awards wasn't perfect. So we decided to look and see who meant a lot to the foundation, who are people who inspire us in the work that we do every single day. And 3 names immediately came to mind. Renata Elizabeth Withers, Lana G. Curran, and Jerry Angel. So these are 3 people we think about on a regular basis, and we feel that the awards have a lot more significance when they have the names of individuals who mean a lot to the foundation.
Well, it's a different kind of CSI. It's the Canadian Shipwreck investigation. We're here at the lab at MUN, where pieces of the vessel that emerged in Cape Ray are being analyzed. Coming up, we'll speak with Chris Brown about when we might get some answers.
And I'll have some answers on how much snow is going to fall over the next little bit. We've got snowfall warnings and winter storm warnings in place. I'll get into all the details coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. The bonus prize deadline is midnight, Friday, April 12th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
All right, Ash, I know you're working hard figuring out this next round of snow and weather that's heading our way. What can you tell us so far?
Yeah, I've lost count now. I should have done a tally of how many significant storms we've seen so far this season. There's been quite a few of them, and this one is no different. The only thing with this one is that we've been seeing some fairly mild temperatures, so there was kind of a hint at some spring there, but the good thing is that we have seen most of the snow that's fallen from our last round in February. That is mostly gone for now. So we've got temperatures sitting anywhere from about 3 to 8 degrees as our daytime highs today up across Labrador. Those temperatures in the southeast anyway were up above zero, but generally hovering around or just below zero, especially for northern portions of Labrador. And if we take a look at the setup that we've got a little area of low pressure that's bringing that shower activity. That is going to end as we head through the night tonight. Then we've got this big ridge of high pressure. That is an Arctic ridge of high pressure that has a lot of cold air associated with it. And that cold air is starting to sink south now and will continue to do so as we head through the night tonight. Temperatures already down to -9 in Lab City, -12 in Nain, and they're starting to dip as well as you head towards the coast. So Cartwright sitting at about -4. Temperatures still above zero though across the island. Those will slowly drop as we head through tonight. So current satellite and current radar, I should say, showing that rain starting to exit eastern portions of the island. Some of these showers are a bit heavy though, and they could drop some heavier showers over the next couple of hours before that will eventually end. And we can see that on the future tracker. So by the time we get to 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, most of that rain should have ended. And otherwise, we're just looking at the potential for maybe a few onshore flurries for the west coast. Otherwise, very quiet up across Labrador as we see this colder air sink south and our next weather maker arrive. So as far as our temperatures are concerned tonight, there's that big drop I was talking about, anywhere from -3 to -8 as our overnight lows across the island. Northern Peninsula, though, you'll be sitting around -10. And then Labrador anywhere from -11 to -22 as your overnight lows. So as we head into tomorrow, our temperatures are going to stay below zero right across the board and or hover around zero along southern areas of the island. Parts of Labrador, you are looking at your temperatures into the -single digits, some cloud cover as well. But for the most part, you are going to sit this system out. Unfortunately, I know there is not a whole lot of snow for you, but you're definitely not going to get any from this area of low pressure. So we'll time this out. As we get into tomorrow afternoon, we'll start to see some of that snow, which will become heavy at times very quickly, spreading from essentially the west coast all the way through to the Avalon. And then pay attention to what happens in the purple. That purple is ice pellets, and there's a pretty large area of ice pellets expected and a significant amount of ice pellets expected with this as well. And that line, wherever it ends up, could eat into some of the snowfall amounts. And then we've got another thing in play overnight on Thursday potentially is the freezing rain, and southern areas of the Avalon, particularly right near the coast, could see significant amounts of freezing rain. So I got to keep an eye on that as the system progresses tomorrow. But we could see some freezing rain warnings associated with this one as well. So the snow will eventually start to end by the time we get into Friday morning from west to east. But that ice pellet line will head further south, and most of the Avalon and Burin Peninsula will be back into that snowfall by the time we get into Friday afternoon. And then this is going to continue right through the day until we get into Saturday. We're also talking about some fairly breezy winds, not overly significant by any means, but we could be talking about 60 to as much as 70 or maybe even 80 km/h winds. So that combined with ice pellets, not so great, and definitely snow will lead to some reduced visibilities through the day. Late day Friday will be when we see the strongest winds. How much snow are we talking about? It looks like it will be fairly significant, 40 to 70 centimeters, maybe more in some areas is likely. At this point, looking like the northern portion of the Avalon back through Clarenville and the northern Burin Peninsula could see the most snow. Still, 25 to 40 centimeters for a good chunk of eastern Newfoundland and towards the Burgeo area is definitely possible, and then 15 to 25 north of that. We'll get into the long-range forecast when I come back.
The mystery of the shipwreck that emerged on the beach at Cape Ray is literally under the microscope here in a lab at MUN. We're here in the Department of Geography, where pieces of that shipwreck are being analyzed to try to figure out where the vessel came from, how old it is, lots of questions around this vessel. And the person who is in charge of looking at all of that is Carissa Brown, a biogeographer here in the Department of Geography. Can you tell us where things stand right now with your investigation into the shipwreck?
Sure. So right now I'm really just preparing the samples to try to figure out what kinds of trees the wood came from that the ship was built out of, and when those trees might have grown.
Some pieces of the vessel here. Can you walk us through what you have here?
Sure. So this is what the provincial archaeologists brought into the lab, and so what they've told me is that this is a piece of the kind of main part of the boat. So you can see it's quite a big beam here. And there's some interesting things going on. So we have this wooden nail or tree nail here. That's one of these that's kind of pounded through a hole there. And there's a wedge in place with a little square nail kind of pushing it in further, which is pretty neat. You can see that there are also a lot of other nail marks and pieces of iron that I think we're holding on other parts of the boat here. And then we got this piece that they said was part of an outer hull that was probably put on after the fact, not part of the original build. They also, a lot of the wood was kind of rough cut, and so they actually were able to bring me pieces of bark, which is pretty neat. And you might be able to smell
this
kind
piece of wafting up here a bit.
So it is definitely a bit stinky. It smells a lot like creosote or tar or something. And this part of the beam you can see has some buildup on it with a little bit of plant fiber. So it's like there's some sort of pitch put on top of the wood here.
What is your theory? Do you have any kind of like working theories about this yet?
I have maybe not quite so much a theory as a fun story that I've made up in my head. And so I think it would be a really neat story if what we found was that this kind of main original part of the ship is European in origin. And I think that's a pretty educated guess. This is a really big piece of very dense hardwood. So we'd not necessarily expect that to be cut in Newfoundland or even the Maritimes. The archaeologists mentioned that there probably was a metal sheathing over this hull that was removed at some point in the past, and then that this other type of wood was put on for structure or repairs on the outside. So kind of the story that I imagine is that this ship was built in Europe and it came back and forth, maybe a couple of times to Atlantic Canada, or maybe just once. At some point, maybe it stayed here. And I imagine metal was a pretty big commodity then. Maybe it was salvaged from the ship for other uses, but then to stabilize and repair the ship, wouldn't it be neat if this wood was actually from Atlantic Canada, like a spruce or a fir or a pine that's more local? So I have no evidence for that, but that's the kind of imagination that this shipwreck is sparking in people. So these are pieces that the provincial archaeologists sampled from the knees of the ship, so those kind of curved support pieces on the hull. And the way that they sampled it was using a tree corer. So if we were to core a tree, we would, it would be a living, growing tree, and we would put this in and just hand drill it to get a core out to tell us about the rings. So what they did on the knee of the ship was that they simply put the corer, the borer, on and took this sample, pulled it out of the knee, and then we can see the growth rings. So I think folks have a good idea of some summers we have really good conditions for growing. We have like bumper crops in our vegetable gardens, and some years we just don't. It's a dud, and we don't get much from our gardens as well. Well, the same goes for any kind of plant, including trees, but the neat thing about trees is that they record that and hold on to that information in their annual wood growth. So if they have a really good growing year, we get a big wide ring of wood around that tree trunk. And if we have a really bad year, maybe it's cold, it's very cloudy, we get a really poor growth year and we get a very narrow ring. And so you can see in the tree rings behind me that we have a series where we have quite a few kind of wide rings in a row, followed by quite a lot of really narrow rings where the tree didn't grow very well for some reason. So we can imagine that that could be something like the little ice age where conditions were really cold and poor for growing in Europe for a number of years. Or it could be that there was just happened to be a few poor years in a row. So the idea is that we can take that pattern of good and not good growth years and match it up to known patterns that we know from Europe and North America of growth patterns that trees have experienced in the past, and use that, kind of float that along that pattern to try to find a match of where this tree fits in history. So the next steps are really for us to use our kind of tree ring measurement system here to get the widths of the rings and do, as those other samples dry, get those same ring samples from those pieces and try to figure out how they're going to fit in the longer chronology that we know about tree records. And then also take sections of those samples, look at them under the microscope, and try to figure out what group of trees they might have come from. We're really hoping we can figure that out in the next few weeks or a couple of months.
We're really looking forward to finding out what you learned from this. Carissa Brown, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
I think that's deplorable. It's a disrespect for families.
Shocking that they're in freezer units next to a dumpster.
It is disturbing.
Coming up, questions about why bodies are piling up inside of freezer trucks by the Health Sciences Center. And now back to one of our top stories. We're here behind the Janeway at the Health Sciences Center, where the Health Authority has parked several freezer trucks. As you heard earlier, these trucks are here as extra storage for dead bodies because the morgue has been frequently overflowing. Now, this is a pretty dark story and one that's connected to inflation. Joining me now to talk more about this is CBC's Anthony Germain. So, Anthony, can you tell us how we got to this point? Where did these come from?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we have 4 of these storage units. And what's basically happened is as the morgue has started to overflow, they've turned this into long-term storage. And so they move the bodies here largely because people with modest incomes, they do the math after somebody dies. They're told, hey, your relative has died. You've got to make some choices. And they say, look, we just don't have the money. And so until those bodies are claimed, this is where they end up.
Okay, so what kind of help is there for people with the cost of cremation and for funeral costs?
Well, Paul Pike is the minister who's actually heads the department that actually offers some assistance. And I'm going to read you some of the things you can find online. So this is Children and Senior Social Development. They do have this program aimed at it. And if you go online, you'll find these kinds of figures. $2,229 for an adult, $1,302 for somebody under 12, for a stillborn child, $744, and the list goes on. But Carolyn, what's important here is that these rates that are on the website, they are 19 years old. They haven't been updated in 20 years. So as you mentioned at the outset, this is a dark story about inflation, and the rates the government gives, the cash that people can qualify for, it hasn't kept up.
So what about the funeral homes in all of this and the funeral industry? What role does it play?
Well, the funeral industry has been pressing the government for many years now to try to address this situation, but now we're at a point where it's never been this serious. So essentially what happens is they bear the costs in the beginning. They don't charge certain families, and in some cases this is added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, and sometimes it takes the government a long time to pay up, and they don't always agree on those rates. So essentially the funeral industry is saying, look, this is not sustainable. We've got to find a system, and it looks as though things are moving in a certain direction to try to address this problem. But right now, as things stand, as we are right here, the solution is to bring in more freezer trucks. We started this story earlier in Here and Now. I said that we're talking about 3. In the last 24 hours, they've changed that. They're now using 4 of these trucks. So that seems to be the solution, bring in more trucks.
Mm-hmm. And, with the aging demographic in this province, more and more people are going to be dying from year to year.
Absolutely. We have about 5,000 people die in this province every year. A number of people can't afford it now. It's an aging population, so this is just going to get more serious.
A growing problem. Anthony Germain, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the province's health authority says there is a process in place for handling unclaimed remains at Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services facilities. Next of kin is contacted, but if there is no next of kin, a public trustee is assigned. From there, the remains are transferred to a funeral home where the trustee helps oversee final arrangements. And as you heard the health minister say earlier, a new permanent storage unit will be built at the Health Sciences Center in the coming months to preserve remains during that process. Well, this story, which was first reported by CBC this morning, prompted some strong reaction from politicians today at the House of Assembly. Here's more of that reaction.
It's a story that I don't think anybody in Newfoundland and Labrador would want to hear, especially about families that can't afford to bury their loved ones. And the only solution that the government has come up with is to store them in a container outside of the Health Science Center. And I think that's deplorable. It's a disrespect for families, and it's a disrespect for the people who obviously have passed away. And so, yeah, I think that was a shock to hear that. And but again, at the same time, it's a reflection of what's happening across this province when it comes to the cost of living.
To me, shocking that they're in freezer units next to a dumpster, and shocking to hear that the minister's solution is to come up with a more permanent storage solution. So here's an idea. Pay the rates, help people who are struggling, help them have a dignified funeral memorial service, and if you want a permanent solution, then a dignified burial, whether that's in a grave or in a columbarium, whatever. But to hear the minister talk about this, either he's doesn't understand the situation, he's being deliberately obtuse, or he's just plain insensitive. Simple as that for me.
I did see that, and it is disturbing. I understand from the health authority when asked that they are looking at a permanent solution so that they could properly store individuals' remains instead of a freezer unit outside. I will admit it's disturbing. It's disturbing to see. When I heard about this, I myself had looked at these units, and it certainly rests on an individual. Anybody with any compassion would find it disturbing.
Where did you learn about it?
When it was brought forward by CBC, I wasn't aware that these storage units were there prior to that.
It's something that you don't think you'll ever get to experience, and when you do, it's like, whoa.
A childhood dream became a reality for one Newfoundlander who made it to the big stage at the new season of Canada's Got Talent. We'll have that when we come back. When Matthew Cooper was growing up in Carbonear, he used to pretend he was a contestant on Canada's Got Talent in his living room. Now, at 26, he's an opera singer and about to experience the real show as a contestant. The new season of Canada's Got Talent premieres on March 19th, but here now Zach Gowdy already caught up with Cooper today.
My name is Matthew Cooper. I'm 26 years old and I'm from Carbonear, Newfoundland. I'm going to be on the next season of Canada's Got Talent.
How does it feel to say that? I can see it. So excited.
It's just an overwhelming feeling. It's something I've wanted for such a long time, and now that it's here, I'm like, what? Like, I'm doing this.
Hello, welcome. What are you going to be doing for us here today?
I will be singing for you guys.
Well, good luck, young man.
The stage is yours.
I still don't think it has hit yet that all this is happening, but it's a surreal, out of this world experience. I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but being on Canada's Got Talent now, and when I was a kid, like, we'd play Canada's Got Talent in my living room.
No way.
So one day I sang my part and my other friends were the judges, and they said, Matthew, you need to try out, like, for voice lessons and stuff like that. I was like, okay, like, I will do it. So I started to become more serious about it. I started working towards goals of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be as an opera singer. And once I got to 18 and I was able to go to university, I applied to MUN.
So we're at the Memorial School of Music now, and this is home turf for you. This is your home stage.
This is my stomping grounds, yeah.
I'm actually 40% deaf in both of my ears.
What?
So this is way more difficult than just singing then?
Yes. So at the time when the auditions came around, I was working as a maid in Calgary. I knew that auditions were happening. I knew the show was happening. I was just like, when are the auditions going to happen? So it was like my Google was on refresh all the time.
So tell me about walking into that room. Tell me about this moment that you've been thinking of and dreaming of for so very long.
Yeah, I walked onto the stage and it doesn't feel real. None of this feels real. It feels very like, this happens to other people, not to me.
The biggest talent competition in the country is going to get even bigger.
I don't want you to give away details in the show, but how did it feel for you, the experience of being on a real television ride like that?
It was amazing. Like, it's something that you don't think you'll ever get to experience, and when you do, it's like, whoa.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the whole run of the show. But tell me, Matthew, where do you want to go from here now, having taken this great ride? What's the next step?
I want to kickstart my music career. I want to release albums now. I want to, get my name out there to not only just Canada, but the world.
CBC News has learned a survivor of the federal Indian day school system is taking her case to Canada's highest court. She's fighting to amend her claim for compensation from Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement. The CBC's Olivia Stevanovich explains.
I was also ashamed to share my abuse and my trauma.
Margaret Swan reads one among hundreds of complaints she's gathered against a multi-billion-dollar settlement agreement she helped create and then quickly came to question.
I thought I would fall apart.
Not so long ago, Swan became a lead plaintiff in a class action against Ottawa for harms caused at federal Indian day schools, institutions like residential schools, except children went home at night.
Students who attended these schools were subject to sexual, physical, and psychological abuse.
In 2019, a deal was cemented between day school survivors and the federal government. The cost was initially pegged at just over $1 billion, but CBC News has learned it's now close to $6 billion. Whatever the cost, the government says it wanted to do one thing better.
What we tried to do was simplify the process here in order that survivors had easier access to the settlement monies without necessarily having to go through the trauma that they had to.
They designed a claim process to avoid re-traumatizing survivors. headed by the claims administrator Deloitte and the law firm Gowling. All survivors had to do was fill out a form, and that's when problems began. It asked a lot, and for some, too much.
Felt traumatized again, victimized again.
You have reached Gowling WLG, class counsel.
And when victims reached out for help,
the period to file a claim has now closed.
They felt no one was there.
I felt compelled to just sign it, and I guess I suffered the consequences. That's the Waterhen School. Yeah.
Waldron hired her own lawyers to update her claim. She was denied. Now CBC News has learned they're asking Canada's highest court to intervene.
These aren't insurance claims. These are claims dealing with real people who were victims of abuse as children.
Both Deloitte and Gowling declined CBC's requests for interviews. When asked to respond over email to concerns about the agreement, a spokesperson said the firms can't comment on what they called third-party views. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Bank of Canada is holding its trend-setting interest rate at 5%. It's the 5th time in a row the bank has held steady, saying it's still too soon to start lowering rates.
Domestically, inflation could prove more persistent than expected. We don't want to keep monetary policy this restrictive for longer than we have to, but nor do we want to jeopardize the progress we've made in bringing inflation down.
Bank Governor Tiff Macklem says the higher rates need more time to be effective. He says even though inflation has been easing, underlying price pressures are still persistently high. Canada's inflation rate dropped to 2.9% in January, bringing it within the Bank of Canada's 1 to 3% target range. Economists are widely expecting the central bank to begin lowering its key interest rate around the middle of the year. Well, scientists have spotted a gray whale off the coast of Massachusetts for the first time in more than 200 years. Researchers circled the area for 45 minutes taking photos, and one of them said she could barely comprehend what she was seeing. Now, gray whales are often seen in the northern Pacific Ocean, but they disappeared from the Atlantic Ocean by the 18th century. Just 5 have been seen in the Atlantic and Mediterranean waters in the last 15 years. Scientists attribute that to global warming. The Northwest Passage, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, has lacked ice in recent summers, and that has allowed gray whales to pass through.
CBC is highlighting Black changemakers from Atlantic Canada who are making a difference, inspiring others and shaping the future. This year, we are asking you to help us identify Black changemakers who are bringing positive change to your community. So, nominate someone today.
I'm from Sydney, Nova Scotia, and I'm a Black changemaker.
I'm a Black changemaker.
And I'm a Black changemaker.
All right, time for a look at the weather and the stormy weather that's on the way. And this system is just going to kind of leisurely stroll across the island, right? Taking its sweet time.
It is, but it is going to drop a lot of snow along with it as it takes its sweet time. The last couple systems have been these longer duration, and like I said, this one no different. Let's take
And
a
that
look.
means more snow, right?
It does mean more snow, yeah. Unfortunately. Let's take a look at what's going to happen. So Thursday evening, that area of low pressure is going to stick around. We may see some snow as far north as the Green Bay, White Bay area, but it shouldn't amount to too much. Now, keep an eye on that pink line there, because that's the line where we could either see, well, we will see ice pellets and also the potential for some freezing rain. And that will linger around the Burin Peninsula as well as the southern portion of the Avalon for most of the day. And then as we get into Friday morning, that line will start to sink further south. But again, the heaviest snow will fall just north of that pink line, it looks like at this point. So by Friday morning, we'll start to see that snow end for the southwest and parts of the western half of the island. The eastern half of the island, you're going to stay in that snow all through Friday. And this is also when we're going to see some of the heavier winds pick up. So anywhere from northeasterlies will be anywhere from 60 to as much as 80, maybe even higher than that along the southern areas of the Avalon. Now, the other thing is the potential for some freezing rain. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, it could be significant for the southern portion of the Avalon. So we certainly need to keep an eye on that. I think my graphics just went away. I currently have a blue screen. Well, let's see. Okay, well, there we go. We're back. So Friday, that's Thursday evening. We'll go ahead to Friday, though. So as we head into Friday evening and then eventually into Saturday morning, we'll start to see the snow taper off. It will be slow, but it will taper off, which will be in time to give us some time to clear this up. Now, as far as Labrador is concerned, you're generally going to sit this one out. On Saturday, though, you may see a few flurries. Your temperatures will be into the minus single digits, and the temperatures will start to warm up for the western portion of the island, but hover around zero or maybe a little bit below for the eastern half of the island. Just going to show you one more time how much snow is on the way. The forecast, heaviest snow to be somewhere between 40 to 70 centimeters. Now, there could be a little bit of change in this, so just keep an eye on the forecast, but regardless, it will be a significant amount of snow. And then that 25 to 40 centimeter range really extending from the Bonavista Peninsula all the way through to Burgeo. So long-range forecast shows temperatures will head back up above zero by Sunday and Monday, hopefully helping with melting. With the chance of some rain on Monday, this will be the story for central and western Newfoundland as well. And then for Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures climbing, especially for eastern areas, above zero as well. And western Labrador, you will hover around -1. Now this photo, there has been a lack of snow in a lot of places, and this is 9 Mile Bog in central. And Dave said it is really hard to snowmobile when there is no snow.
Oh, I bet it's windy there too.
It certainly looks like it. If you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, you can send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
That's a great shot, nice and crisp. Very nice.
Beautiful blue sky.
That was such a weird glitch.
It was a weird glitch.
I have not seen that before. Your green screen went blue. That was bizarre.
It's very odd. I saw it flickering earlier.
Yeah.
So that's okay. At least it was only at the end.
Yeah. I'm glad we got it back.
Yeah.
My goodness, because it's important stuff. We want to know about this storm on the way.
Definitely is.
All right, well, that's it for us. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us.
Good night.